Disney Pixar A Bug Life. It was right in the middle of the harvest that an ant named Flick had an idea. Flick was always inventing things. This invention, an automatic harvester, wasn't so bad. But Princess Ada wouldn't listen to Flick. She was too busy figuring out if there would be enough grain for Hopper and his greedy grasshopper gang. Every year, the grasshoppers came to demand food from the ants. This year, for the first time, Ada was in charge of the harvest. Suddenly, the ants could hear the grasshoppers coming. Ada was flustered. The queen took over. "Food to the offering stone and into the anthill," she said. The ants left the grasshoppers' grain piled up on the offering stone. Flick ran for cover too, but as he was taking off his terrific harvesting machine, he knocked over the offering stone. All the grain slid down into the dry, cracked riverbed. Hopper, the grasshopper's leader, was going to be furious. Hopper was indeed furious. Flick tried to stand up to him, but couldn't. Hopper grabbed Dot, the queen's youngest daughter, and threatened the terrified ants. "Let's double the order of food. We'll be back at the end of the season," he snarled. Flick knew that if the ants obeyed Hopper, they wouldn't have enough food for themselves, so he got another idea. "We could find bigger bugs to come here and fight," he suggested. Princess Ada and the queen didn't like the idea, but they were glad to send Flick away. Only Dot had faith in him. "Good luck, Flick," she called as he floated away on his quest. An audience of rowdy flies were booing yet another circus performance. P.T. Flea, the circus owner, had enough. "You're all fired," he yelled at his performers. Soon Flick arrived in the city. He had never seen anything like it. This was the place to find tough bugs. Flick found the out-of-work circus bugs in a run-down tavern. He mistakenly thought they were warriors. They thought he was looking for circus bugs. The circus bugs thought Flick was offering them a contract to perform for the ants. So away they flew to Ant Island, dreaming of applause and full-time jobs. When they got to Ant Island, the circus bugs found out what the ants expected of them. Then Rosie the spider told Flick that they were actually circus bugs. The circus bugs quietly slipped away. Flick ran after them, begging them to stay. Manny, the praying mantis, spoke for them all. He said Flick had tricked the bugs into thinking they'd be in the show. Flick was about to plead some more when he saw something that terrified him. It was a bird who ate bugs. "Run!" he yelled. As they ran, Flick and the circus bugs saw Dot floating towards them. The bird had spotted Dot too. Swiftly, Francis flew up and grabbed the princess, while Slim held up Heimlich to distract the bird. Flick and the others helped Dot and Francis escape. Then they all flew into a prickly bush. The bird flew away. Flick, Dot, and the bugs climbed down from the bush to find the whole ant colony cheering them. What a wonderful sound! The circus bugs had never heard applause before. Right then, the circus bugs decided to help the ants, if Flick could come up with a plan. Flick did indeed have a plan, but he knew that the ants wouldn't listen to him. The plan had to come from the circus warriors. Manny was elected to explain the plan to Princess Ada. He told her they would chase the grasshoppers away with a fake bird. Ada agreed. The ants stopped collecting grain and helped the bugs build the bird. They liked the idea of little ants defeating big grasshoppers. They also still thought the warriors were heroes. Once the bird was finished, the bugs raised it up into a knothole in the tree. When the time came, Flick would fly it out and give Hopper the scare of his nasty life. Far away from Ant Island, some of Hopper's gangsters were muttering to one another. Why should they go back to Ant Island? They already had plenty of food. Hopper didn't agree. There was that ant that stood up to me, he reminded the gang. You let one ant stand up to us, they might all stand up, he said, adding, there goes our way of life. Hopper looked around. Not one grasshopper in his gang dared to disagree with him. Let's ride, he ordered them. With a loud buzz, the gang took off for Ant Island. Meanwhile, Flick was telling the circus bugs that their work was finished because the bird was ready. They wouldn't have to stay and fight. But now the circus bugs didn't want to leave. They liked the idea of being heroes. Then P.T. Flea showed up. I'm looking for a bunch of circus performers, he told the ants. Flick tried to hide the truth, but the ants discovered that their warrior bugs were only circus bugs. The queen ordered the circus bugs to leave and to take Flick with them. Dot wanted to go with her friends, but her mother held her back. The ants knew they couldn't fight the grasshoppers alone. Frantically, they started collecting grain again, but there wasn't enough time. The alarm sounded. The grasshoppers had arrived. Mother, Ada cried, what do we do? The queen had no answer. The grasshoppers marched on the ants. Hopper had no mercy. He and his gangsters turned the ants into slaves. They were even planning to squash the queen. When Dot overheard this, she knew she had to do something. So she sneaked away to find Flick. He would know what to do. Once Dot convinced Flick to come back, he was ready to fight. She knew his bird idea would work. The circus bugs wanted to help too, but they knew P.T. Flea would object, so they shut him up in the wagon. Then the whole group hurried back to Ant Island. While the circus bugs were distracting Hopper and his gang with the circus performance, Flick and Dot rallied the ant children together. They sneaked up to get the bird ready. When Gypsy the moth gave the signal, Flick's fake bird zoomed down from the tree, straight at the awful grasshoppers. Frightened, Hopper and his gang ran. Then P.T. Flea, who had never understood Flick's plan, escaped, thinking that the bird was a danger to them all. P.T. Flea set it on fire. All they needed was P.T. Flea this entire time. He had it under control.
Which one's P.T. Flea?
P.T. Flea's the circus ringmaster that fired them all at the first.
Is it this one?
No.
Oh, that
P.T.
guy.
Flea.
What the?
Yeah, his tiny booty came back. He's all like, no, my circus performers. Suddenly, Hopper realized that he had been tricked. He quickly got his gang back together. Once more, the terrible grasshoppers threatened the poor ants. This time, Hopper's target was Ada. Flick couldn't stand it. Leave her alone, he cried. Flick's action gave the other ants the courage they needed. The rest of the ants and circus bugs joined forces, and they attacked. Hopper knew he couldn't survive if he fought against so many ants, but at least he could get Flick. Suddenly, it started to rain, and everyone ran for cover. During the confusion, Ada was able to grab Flick away from Hopper, but Hopper wouldn't give up. He chased Flick and Ada across the river. Flick got another idea. He remembered where the real bird had its nest. He told Ada where to fly. When Hopper saw the bird, he laughed. Another one? Of your little bird tricks? He teased. But it wasn't. Bye-bye, Hopper. Ouch. The grasshoppers never returned, and the ants never had to worry about food again. The following spring, P.T. Flea's circus set out on a victory tour. A few of the ants wanted to see the world, as Flick had done, and they went along on the tour. They left Flick with Ada and the rest of the colony. He would be happy inventing things to make ant life easier. He had enough of adventure, and home was where he wanted to stay. I Spy. Go on an adventure, crawl back in the story, and find these wild pictures.
Pictures?
Yeah, you've got a picture of them making the bird. You got Hopper chasing Flick, Heimlich and Francis. You got Hopper chasing Flick again. You got the circus leaving. You got Baby Dot. And then you got Manny and Gypsy. Where'd you go? I was showing. The end.